everybody. I guess this was an effort to try and reach out and see where we're at and see how everybody's doing in this COVID period, and to talk principally about the new climate action plan that just came out this week. Thank you very much, Kate. And Brian, I know you had a big part in the creation of that.
A very small part compared to Kate.
So why don't we just do a really quick check-in, and we'll just go around. You want to start, Sharon?
Sorry, did you call on me, Doug?
Yeah, I just wondered if you wanted to do a quick check-in.
You want to ask me a question?
Well, just how you're doing, or any considerations. I'm just principally worried. I just want to make sure everybody's, if there's anything outstanding that anybody wants to touch on before we jump in. Brad, do you have anything?
Not really. I feel very fortunate about not being affected as a family, parents and stuff, and so it's actually been a time to be able to concentrate on stuff, not necessarily get stuff done, but
Yeah. Janet, do you have anything?
No, I'm fine. I think, anything to do with CSAC has been pretty much on hold, but I, listened to various webinars and tried to keep myself informed. And I'm healthy, and everybody around me is healthy.
I'm glad to hear that. Julie?
No, that's funny. My order is different from yours. I wasn't expecting to come up next. But no, I'm fine. I agree with Brad. I mean, we're all very fortunate here in Concord where we have, homes and yards and, large enough to I don't know, enjoy and not feel like we're stuck in a teeny tiny apartment with no access to outdoor spaces. So, yeah.
Great to hear that. How about you, Jerry?
you're muted.
You're on mute.
There you go.
Okay, all's good here. Situation for me and my family is pretty similar to what Brad and Janet described. And Julie, we're well fortunate that we've got space to get outside and still stay distanced. I work from home normally, so my daily life isn't terribly different, which is kind of surreal these days. But I've got no complaints. Happy to be doing well. I'm glad we're restarting here.
Mm-hmm.
Karen?
I'm doing great. I quit my job in March, planning to do a whole bunch of travel this summer, all of which has been canceled. But, been healthy, happy, hanging out with my mom and doing lots of walks around the neighborhoods. So
Paddling?
Only once so far, but lots more to come. Yeah.
Bob?
Hi, everyone. Everything's going well with myself, and I see a lot more of my wife, who is working from upstairs now. All's good, except I'm obviously concerned with the course of our nation and the disease, and I can't escape that stress, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Looking forward to November for change, hopefully.
Thanks, Bob. Terry, do you have anything? You're on mute, so if you... Oh, we'll go to Andy. Andy, do you have anything?
I'm with Pamela Dritt, but we both seem to be, in the lucky not having any issues. Everything's fine. I'm concerned about the second wave, and why is Massachusetts the third highest in the state, in the country? I think that, I thought we knew better, but anyway.
I'm back. Sorry. I have been fine. Everyone's fine. I've been stir crazy like everyone. And then just in the last few days, I have nonstop Zoom meetings. Like today, I have a Zoom meeting from 10 in the morning till 5 or 6 tonight. So that's why I'm on mute and my video's done. I'm trying to make a salad real quick while I'm listening. But whoever just said that about Massachusetts being the third worst, I think that's changed now. That's a historical thing, and other states are catching up now.
Unfortunately.
How have you been affected on the planning board in terms of, have meetings started on the planning board?
Mhm.
I'm back to a salad.
Terry,
Select board.
select board?
Select board, yes. Yes, we've been meeting on the select board every week by Zoom.
Oh, oh. You're one of those essential committees.
Right.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, all the committees are meeting again, which is wonderful. But some scheduling issues, no big deal.
Yeah. I've been fine in our family for the most part. I have parents that are living, they were living in Newbury Court, but they moved into where with my sister during the March period. But it's been a really kind of an interesting challenge. I have a 97-year-old father and a 94-year-old mother. And that's interesting. And I'm excited that we're going to get back focused on some of this stuff. So why don't we jump in? I sent out copies of the February meeting minutes, and I'd like to get them approved. Does anybody have any comments about the meeting minutes that need to be adapted or changed?
Well, Brad and I made some minor modifications and sent them to you and Julie.
Oh, yeah.
Very small.
No, it was just today. You probably haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but
Yeah.
Okay. Can we get a motion to approve the minutes based on the changes that Brad and Sharon?
I move that we approve the minutes as modified by Sharon and Brad.
A
I'll
second?
second.
Any second?
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Hi.
Any nays? No? Okay. Good. We'll move ahead. Thank you. You want to give us a little bit of an update, Brad, on the Heat Smart Alliance?
Yeah. I wrote some notes up to keep it short, and I can share them with people, or I can just read them. The last we remember, we were in February. We had a couple of Heat Smart Alliance events, one of which was in Harvey Wheeler, and we had a really large participation. We had 120 people in the audience. It went really well. According to Charlie Parker, it was the best town event he'd been to. So I
Wow.
was really very pleased with that. I will send a link to the presentation that Bob Zog made at the event, which was, I think, very clear and to the people. It wasn't too technical, it was just technical enough. And since then, we've received a fair number of coaching inquiries, people who came to the events and maybe got quotes from installers at those events or other installers. And that has been picking up a lot in the last couple of weeks. It's enjoyable. I'm going to be sharing that with Kim Slack. But it takes some time, but it's part of really what we need to do. Our group is now 17 different communities, which is really kind of gratifying, but we've used this period to get organized better. We're having monthly meetings and then more often subgroup meetings. For example, we've had a subgroup on organizational structure where we have decided on goals and policies and individual and municipal member agreements. Goals are, well, so the scope is air source, ground source heat pumps, and it may and heat pump water heaters. That scope could enlarge a little bit, but that's really what we're focusing on. Our goal in 2030 is to have up to 50 member communities, and in those communities displacing 50% of home and building heating loads. It's a real
Ambitious.
stretch goal, very ambitious. We don't know how we're going to get there and how much we're going to participate, but we're going to do what we can to help achieve that goal. One of the things we mentioned before, and it hasn't been finalized, is what the relationship would be between the Heat Smart Alliance and either Mass Energize or another nonprofit. We've talked about various ways of organizing it. That hasn't been decided yet. And one of the points is the mission can be very much in line with what we're doing in Mass Energize, but there are some issues. So and a lot of it has to do with installers and how we treat installers, and we're trying to sort that out.
Does it create conflict of interest?
It can. So we want to be very neutral on installers and technologies. We don't want to promote certain installers. But what we might like to do is allow people to rate installers and have a neutral way that people can look at a list and say, okay, these look like ones to start with. This is it's a challenging bit, but we want the municipalities that we work with to be comfortable with our practices around that. We have working groups on heat pump modeling and performance, and also on marketing communications, installer relations, advocacy, a lot going on. And it's a very interesting group of people, I must say. I've gotten to meet a lot of people that I have never seen in person, but are digging in on some technical questions and also sort of policy questions.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Brad, you said at the beginning that Charlie Parker said it was the best town event he'd been to. What do you think, what accounts for that? Was it like an extra load of...
really well published. It was really well publicized, and largely thanks to Janice Setti and at the Light Plant, who did some great promotion. And there's pent-up demand for people whose heating systems are getting old, things like that.
Great.
But a lot of people heard about it, and maybe the day was right. People showed up. Mm-hmm. It was also well organized, and I wasn't much part of the organization of the event. Mm-hmm. That was other people, but it went very smoothly. So we had this huge crowd, but they were satisfied with a nice presentation, and they got to interact with installers and such.
That's great.
I was at the event, and it was really successful in terms of, I think it was a standing room only crowd at Harvey Wheeler, which was unexpected. Yeah. Also, your comment, Brad, about getting the technology, the level of detail right, it was perfect for me. Like before I went to this, I didn't know the difference between a split and an air source heat pump, and come to find out, oh, now I get it. A split is a type of air source heat pump, and it all clicked for me. And after that, I ended up calling some of the installers and getting quotes, and everything really clicked for me at that. So it was really excellent. Thank you.
Right. I would say one thing that I saw this morning at a presentation from Mass CEC is that 50% of surveyed people in Massachusetts have no idea what a heat pump is. They might have heard those words, but really no idea. So there's a long way to go, a big opportunity. And of course, it's complicated, but that's what we're trying to work on.
Do you have any updates on Mass Energize?
Yes, so those are the two things I've been working on the most. So Mass Energize, for anybody who's, most of the people here know what it is, but it's our nonprofit 501c3 organization that I founded with some other people a year ago. We've been working on tools for communities to become more sustainable by reaching their residents and really partnering with local groups to reach residents to help them understand sustainable actions, solar, EVs, anything of impact. We got several towns going now: Wayland, Newton, Framingham, and Concord now has a site up. I'll show you in a moment. Soon, Lexington, Winchester, and another community, JCAN, which is not a geographic community. The Jewish Climate Action Network has a community of congregations working with us. We're hoping to do we're hoping to be active in 20 communities next year. We in Concord, we decided to resurrect the Cooler Concord brand, which was a website that CSEC put up a couple of years ago, but the town was not really comfortable with CSEC operating a website. So our nonprofit group is doing that with a group of community volunteers. And I'll show you that in a moment, but that way we can use the newsletter, the Facebook page, and the mission is very much, well, I'll show you, could I share the screen for a moment? Real quick?
Access Kate, I think.
I won't.
You should be able to, Brad.
Okay. I'm going to just share this. Okay, so there's that. I just have to, I should have brought it up. So if I go on this thing, coolerconcord.org, this will take you to a site which looks a bit different than the old site. This is pictures of Concord. There's the Cooler Concord Fair and downtown. Oh, I have to hit share. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
There's that last button. So this is our web portal that we have populated with actions and events in Concord. And this is just, we're not promoting this. We have local content and pictures working together to reduce carbon for a cooler planet. That was the slogan we had chosen a couple of years ago. There's goals in terms of completing actions and getting households engaged. These aren't final. This is kind of work in progress. And then there's upcoming events and campaigns, and I made one up just for this meeting called Your Sustainable Future Home Now, a fair we could have at some point. And another one, which we are trying to do, called the Concord Sunflower Challenge. And this is something we're launching because we received a donation of about 50,000 packages of sunflower seeds, of which I have 1,000 that I'm going to distribute at local stores. So this will be a way of promoting getting down to your local businesses, getting some sunflower seeds, planting them, and then there's lots of actions, and this is where we actually need help from people to help with the content. Things about energy assessments, EVs, heat pumps, offsetting air travel and such. And so we have, I'm going to stop sharing because I don't want to take too long. It would be easy to take too much of the meeting. We have some high school interns that were recruited by a teacher to help us out, taking photos, doing social media. We have some, Gilda is working with me, and we've met with Brian and Janet and a couple other people about getting good feedback and making the site usable and of value to people to take part in. Now that's pretty much what I wanted to mention. We are meeting as a group of community leads, and one of the things that this has been very nice is bringing teamwork together at a higher level, because people in Newton and in other towns, they have some great ideas that we can take advantage of, promotions we can run, things we can do. So that's one of the nice things, is to sort of taking advantage of teamwork at a higher level and not having to reinvent things all the time. So it's a work in progress, which I'm very excited about. I expect it'll be ready to really promote heavily before September. And among sort of people who are plugged into sustainability, we'll be promoting it a bit before then to get a lot of feedback and improve on the content.
Thank you, Brad.
Sure.
Let's go into our discussion of the town's climate action and resilience plan, and maybe Kate or Brian, coming from the CAAV board and coming from being the author of the plan, do you have anything you want to start off, us off in terms of the way we are focused toward it? One of the things that I did try to do in the last 2 days, I've read the plan quite extensively, and one of the things I did was I took out of all the sections in the back where you have your detailed implementation plan, all the ones that were relevant to CSEC, I pulled together into a matrix or into a spreadsheet, so that I had a listing of all the things that were, there was at least some expectation that CSEC might perhaps be involved, so that it would give a way of focusing on some of the things that we might or might not do. But why don't you spend a
I
minute?
can give the synopsis introduction. If you haven't watched the video on YouTube, I did a 7-minute introduction presentation, so I won't repeat all of that, but that's kind of like, if you have 7 minutes, watch that introduction. It shares a little bit about how the plan came together. But as many of you know, we've been working on this since the fall, really, thanks to an MVP action grant. We've been working with Kim Lundgren Associates, who we've worked with before, to develop this climate action and resilience plan. So the goal of the plan is to lay out our top priority actions for both reducing emissions 80% by 2050 per our Article 51 goal, and making a more resilient community. So it addresses both mitigation and resilience. And the plan itself, like I said, it identifies these kind of 22 priority actions. There's also a few leadership priorities that are kind of cross-cutting actions that we commit the leadership on climate action. And for each of the actions, there's these detailed blueprints, which Doug mentioned, that outline steps for how we're going to get it done, partners that should be involved, potential funding mechanisms, community engagement opportunities, and equity. So the idea is that it sets these clear commitments that these are the priority actions that we need to take over the next 5 to 10 years, and some details about how we're actually going to take that idea into an action. So that's kind of the high level overview. I can answer questions, but the draft plan is up on the web, and public comments are due the 22nd, which is a Monday. So if you have specific comments, I'll take some notes as you're discussing, but please submit your comments through the form on the website. That will make it the easiest to compile all the comments to integrate into the next and final version of the plan that will be made available in early July. Brian, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
Yeah, I think that it's important to understand that even if CSEC is not listed directly on an action or an implementation step, you know, the thought has been that you guys will be there to help with all of this. You know, this is something that, you know, CAB and CSEC are going to be involved in just about everything about this plan, because those are the two committees in town that relate to climate. So I would like to ask that you kind of focus your feedback on the actions and not so much on the first setup part of the report on how the priorities were made, or maybe the history of Concord. But focus on those blueprints and on the plan elements, the bigger, because that's forward-looking. That's what we're going to work on. Whereas the rest of the report, the beginning part of the report, is really a setup on what we've done, who we are, and all of that. So, yeah, I think CSEC is going to be very important to taking things that have happened and doing them at scale. You know, for example, electric vehicle adoption, or, you know, heat pumps. We know how to do that. CAB doesn't need to create an EV strategy. The town already has that. What we need is campaigns and education and you know, feedback from on the ground efforts, trying to get people to do those actions, because we can't mandate that people buy an electric car. We can only suggest residents buy that car. And so that's where CSEC could be very helpful. So those are my thoughts. And I'm free to answer any questions about the plan. And or what CAB is going to focus on.
Sounds good. I don't have the best idea about how to structure taking each one of our feedback. I assume that some of you have had a chance to look at that since it came out. One of the things that I did, at least, I made an effort to make some commentary with my own impressions, but I don't think that just reading that or something is really appropriate. I think it would be better to have a discussion about some of the more salient parts of the blueprint that maybe came up to people. Do others have thoughts on how we want to approach this too, in terms of collecting the feedback? Do we want, one thing I would ask myself right now is, I think based on the way the feedback mechanism has been created, maybe the easiest approach is for each one of us to respond after a discussion today with directly to the comment section, rather than to necessarily try to collectively create a set of comments and then submit them as one from CSEC. What do others think?
Doug, could I suggest that it's great to give specific feedback through that mechanism, but I'd like to hear your general feelings about the plan and about the structure, because I think that's harder to document in a form online. It's not as specific. So if you have broad ideas, that'd be great to hear.
One of the things that I'll start off a discussion with just one or two thoughts that I was having in a general sense. So much of the goals that are laid out are discuss greenhouse gas emissions in millions of tons of CO2 and
metric tons.
Metric tons of CO2. And I found as I was reading it, like as a human being, it's hard for me to always have a way to relate to what that feels like or means. And it's esoteric for a lot of people. So it's hard for them to get on a track to get in relationship to why that is so important. And
I think so. One of the indicators of success section talks about not only the metric tons, but it also talks about number of all electric buildings being 136 residents. It talks about, it gives other ways to quantify action towards that reduction goal. So those can be helpful, but I struggled with that same question on the Energy Futures Task Force report. In fact, the high school was being built then, and I tried to equate the weight of the high school to the amount of annual emissions that the town produced. And it was about 2.5 high schools.
so you used an analogy or a parable sort of approach. I think something like that that's done more creatively.
I spent a lot of time with the consultants talking about equivalencies, and the challenge is that it's really big. So like equivalency of our 2016 emissions is like driving to the Mars multiple times. Like it's just a really big amount. So it's like hard to put a tangible equivalency to it because it's bigger than something most of us can wrap our heads around. So it's a good point, Doug. I think, it is hard for most folks to relate to metric tons of carbon. So we can try to think through that again. But if anyone has any brilliant ideas.
Brad, do you have an idea?
One thing I often like to try to relate to people is so we each generate a lot of CO2, much more than the average world citizen. So the average world citizen from at least a few years ago generated 5 tons, and we generate close to 20 tons, maybe 14 tons when we're just talking about our energy emissions. And so per person. And rather than this thing with lots of zeros, we generate an amount of weight that we can imagine, and it's just some gas. But if we can, it might be useful to lay out, hey, what does a Concord resident produce compared to an average person in the country and an average person in the world? And we know the average person in the world makes too much. That's why we have a problem.
Well, I think
that's just a thought.
A lot of numbers are thrown around, in terms of metric tons of CO2 generated and the importance of that. But oftentimes I felt that there was lack of context for understanding those numbers. And if they were right or wrong, I wouldn't really be able to judge.
So I would like to suggest that this is exactly what CSEC should work on based on the plan. So this plan is to set up these kind of groups working with this kind of focus. It's not necessarily, we don't have to figure that out now, but I think that this plan gets people beyond the big picture. We need to take bold action on climate, and gets to, these are the actions we should do to address climate. How do we actually get to actually implementing those actions? And analogies is a part of that. So I'm hoping that we get the town as a whole to move forward on this discussion topic with this plan, and that we start to build out those details in these blueprints that are in the plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any other ideas that maybe aren't about analogies, but more about other topics?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments on analogies that I've seen that I find effective.
Okay.
Simple things like how many automobiles are offset based on an equivalent CO2 reduction. Trees planted, those things people can relate to, because versus just a number, I agree that it's a little hard just to have a number of metric tons. I'm curious as to what any of our past comments, that those of us who commented, does the document that's online include past comments that we gave?
Oh, yeah, a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have version 1 of the one that you distributed that has your comments in it, Bob, from back in April rather, but it was done in a way that seems different than the new comments.
So then this version that just came out this week incorporates many, 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 many comments on the first version. So it looks and feels and reads differently than the first one.
Right.
Can I
But-
ask,
I think it's,
I just wanted to ask, like, what's the ultimate goal? And I'm sorry if I've missed this in all the communications that have gone out, but what is the goal for this document? Where will it be posted? Who's going to see it? Is every resident in Concord going to be alerted that they should take a look at this and absorb this document?
Wouldn't that be wonderful if everyone in Concord would read this document? The goal, the goal, Julie, is that this is written in a way that is accessible to every resident in Concord. And so, I think for a lot of folks like you all and others on committees looking for more detail on a lot of things, but really this is ideally written so that anyone can pick it up and understand what do we mean when we talk about sustainability in Concord and what are the things that we've committed to doing. And so this is not intended to sit on a shelf, but to really be something that is revisited and kind of integrated into the operations of the town. So the blueprints are intended to kind of set out what are those steps that we need to take, and a lot of that is on town staff, but also, working with partners like CSEC and CAB and other town committees and groups. And, the plan is that every year there'll be a progress report that updates the status of all these actions. How are we doing? Are we on schedule? Are we behind? Are we delayed? And then in 5 years, we'll do a full review of the plan because things change so quickly when it comes to the sustainability world that hopefully in 5 years, we'll have made progress on a lot of these things, and there'll be new ideas and policies and concepts that we should be moving forward in the next 5 years. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I guess I'm just curious. So it sounds a little bit like a sort of an in-house document for the town, and no.
No, it's designed to really be available and accessible to everyone in town, and so that everyone can see what does the town need to do. And when I say town, I don't just mean me and town staff. I mean everyone in Concord, because as already been mentioned, there's only so many policy options that we have to kind of say this must be done. A lot of the work that has to happen to move us towards our goal is voluntary and behavior change. And so, the CSEC's initiatives in the past are a great example of how we've been able to move that forward. So really the audience is the entire community of Concord, residents, businesses, town officials.
And that's via the town website. That's where it will officially reside.
Yep.
And will there be any sort of notices going out, to a postcard or something to alert people to check in on it? Do you want to know what your town is doing and where we're hoping to go in the next couple of decades? Is there anything to kind of like draw people's attention to it being there?
I haven't got that far ahead yet, Julie, but that's a really good idea.
I will announce it on Monday at the select board meeting that the public comment period, it's open for public comment.
So
Yeah.
this is the second draft. The final will come out in July. And
No,
that's
but
when,
Brian, they are going to announce at the select board. We do want them to announce that it's out for public comment at the select board.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Public
So
comment.
yes, Terry, that would be great.
Public comment until June 22nd.
Yep.
And a 7-minute intro video. And so that'll give some publicity to it. And then when the final plan comes out, I will announce again.
Thank you. Yes. But yeah, I think that's a good point, Julie, that maybe there's an opportunity to spread the word when it's done more broadly.
I'm just thinking, okay, this might be like a very sort of facile view of it, but you know, it's a huge document, right? It's a massive document, and not everyone will read every word. But I'm thinking that if there could be something like, you know, a sort of a town-wide postcard or something, just to say, you know, guess what? Your town's been doing a ton of work behind the scenes, and we have this fantastic document. But maybe, you know, when you get a new product and you get like the long manual that nobody looks at, and then you get that, like on your phone, a new phone, you get a little quick start, right? A little quick start. You know, is that an idea to kind of like take all those pages and maybe sort of just make a small synopsis, but just sort of say, and here's where you can find the whole document. But, you know, a lot of people will sadly just check out that, you know, the quick look.
We could use news and notices. Postcards are very expensive, and a lot of people don't look at the mail anyway. But news and notices is, I don't know how many people get that. I think lots and lots of people get that.
Yeah, and online newsletters and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the pages that I thought was particularly good, if you can see this one, it's the one that is priority actions at a glance. That's like
Right, at a glance, exactly.
So yeah, so Aaron, the information officer, will distribute this through all the normal channels.
Okay.
Brad,
Brad?
I have a suggestion that I came up with. I have a lot of suggestions I want to make, but I think I'm really impressed with this draft. Really happy with everything. So most of my suggestions are very minor little things. But one thing I would like us to think about is metering gas flowing into the town. Because that's a number, you know, every year you know what goes to commercial, you know what goes to residents, and you know what goes to municipal. And if that number goes down, it kind of means we're going in the right direction, because the delivered fuels will probably be going down faster, hopefully. And so I think that's a good impact measure, because there's so many things which are difficult impact measures. You know, how do we really measure this and that? This is a real direct one that I think we ought to sort of keep on the dashboard.
yeah, I think that's good. I'm glad to hear you say that you're impressed, Brad.
I am. I don't think you've got any sleep in the last couple of weeks.
Well, you know, working from home has its advantages, because I don't have any commute time and far fewer meetings. So like Terry, I've had some marathon Zoom days. But yeah, I've really been trying to make this incorporate all the feedback that we got in the first draft. And I really want this to be a document that people are happy with. It may not have every single thing that you would want to see in the plan, but overall feel really good that this lays out an ambitious and actionable plan that we can really move forward and, you know, obviously update along the way. So that's good to hear, Brad. Thanks.
And
Kate, I have a question for Kate. Kate, to what degree do people's performance review at the town of Concord have any type of sustainability goal or carbon reduction goal? And what would be the likelihood of that happening on a town-wide basis? Because it gives it some teeth that each individual employee has to think about what they have done for carbon reduction or sustainability in their day-to-day workday.
And that's a comment we've gotten before as well. That is integrated into this plan under one of the leadership priorities to look at governance and how the town is integrating sustainability into the operations, and that includes you know, the roles of town staff. So it's not something that, you know, I think it's hard to give you a yes or no answer whether it's in everybody's job description at this point, but that's why it's one of the leadership priorities to take a look at that.
yeah, page 12 has a great summary of those cross-cutting priorities.
I think I'll come back. I just want everybody to have what they identified as particularly important. So I'll let others talk, but I have some other thoughts too.
Now, one of the big goals is expanding solar, and through incentives and stuff. And one thing the plan might be missing is an active evaluation of all the buildings in town. Like, there's lots of homes, of course, and we want more of those to have solar. So should a committee or group be identifying those homes and even more aggressively the commercial buildings and saying, we think your building is really good for solar, and love to help you on making a plan for carrying that out in a few years. That's not really in the plan as it is now.
No, but that sounds like a solarized campaign or work that's been done in the past. So it could be an option. I don't think we have that called out right at the moment, though.
Yeah, so that was what the high school did back in 2013, and worked really, really well. When you get a high school student writes you to say your home is great for solar, they take notice. It
Right.
cuts through a lot of the clutter. There is also, Google has a great, I forget what it's called, but basically they use their Google Maps functions to do that roof assessment. And they do it they do it from Boston out to Lexington and stop just before Concord. So maybe we need a letter campaign for them to expand that software to cover Concord so that we can have that done, and then have the high school students write to homeowners and businesses to take that action.
Yeah. Good one.
A comment that I can make is there was some in the section around page 14 to 15 where you talk about, there's a page that talks about social resilience. And then the very next page on page 15, it jumps to potential urban design strategies. And that's kind of like high up in the document. It's like in the early part of the document. And when you go to potential urban design strategies, it talks about the way that Concord could be called. It talks about potential urban design strategies. And it seemed to me that a number of the strategies that were pointed out or suggested, particularly the one about the storefronts and the water level around the storefronts, may have to do with an urban design, but not so much. I think of Concord as being more of a suburban town as opposed to an urban town. But the way that it's worded is it's almost seemed like it came off of boilerplate to discuss other communities.
So those recommendations came from part of the plan involved working with one of the subcontractors to look at the vulnerability of town centers to the impacts of climate. So those are recommendations that they made for Concord based on best practices for specifically Concord Center, where there's risk of flooding and experienced flooding. So they are based on best practices, but that was developed specifically for Concord. But that's helpful that it doesn't read that way.
Because I mean, has in anybody's near memory, has there been a time when the downtown in Concord was flooded?
One of the shop owners said that their basement flooded 7 times in 1 year.
Yeah,
not at the street level.
So I know that, you know where Concord Lumber is? You head towards the boat ramp.
Yeah.
Across from Concord Lumber on the other side of the little road, those homes literally had water right up to the threshold of their entry door. And that was in 2010 timeframe. So we do get pretty serious flooding around town, and our commercial districts in particular were built around the waterways because that's where power came from for a lot of that industry. So it is a concern. And do you mind making me a person who can share a document?
You should be able to share.
All right, I now need to find the document. Sorry. But I wanted to share that report from One Architects.
Oh yeah, that will be an appendix to the plan. It's not included in the document right now because we're just finalizing all the appendices, but their summary of their study and best practices will be included in the final report.
Right. But I want to show them real quick because I don't think they've seen this document.
Do you have a draft of Appendix X?
X is,
That
I
sounds
hope
like a really interesting one.
it's the best one. It has all the stuff in it.
There's a table in there too, which refers to table X, but there's
Yeah.
there's
This is still a draft, so there are some wonky things like X as placeholders for the actual numbers and names of tables. No need to submit those as comments. Trust me, I know that they're there. They will be fixed in the final.
Sorry, Kate, I already sent them to you.
We have a copy editor. We're good.
Brian and Terry, I was wondering if you have a specific part of this draft that you'd like CSEC to look at as a group and that you want our input on.
Oh, yes. I didn't come prepared for that.
a sense that I got from reading what I looked at. Maybe I'm off on this, but when I looked at the blueprints, the two that seemed to have more focus to CSEC were the as-built section, the blue section, and also the energy section, which was the yellow section. Not to say that the others didn't have a little, but they had less. And some had none. And just for those of you that hadn't looked at it as much, the color coding of the different blueprint sections in the back is super helpful. It makes it really clear as to like what belongs to what part. That was really good, Kate.
Thanks, that's good. Good to hear.
That was a change from the previous draft.
Are there any other general comments? Oh, Terry, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so it looks really great, and I'm just thinking about what Sharon that just asked that question.
Yes.
So actually, I'm wondering, and this is a question for Brian too. Maybe Cab and Kate and CSEC would like to come to a select board meeting and spend 15 minutes or whatever going through and seeing if the board has questions or priorities, and also that's all on TV and you get more publicity. So that's one question I have. And my other question is, Kate, if you've thought about doing an executive summary, because I did hear a number of comments about how people are gonna, look through it real quick. And that would highlight what you really want to highlight.
Yeah, both good questions, Terry. Unfortunately, the Climate Action Advisory Board is meeting at the same time as the Select Board on Monday, so I already...
Oh, no, that's fine. We already have a full agenda.
Okay. At a future meeting, yeah, that would be great. I think, in maybe earlier mid-July when the final plan is out, it would be great to present it kind of to the Select Board, obviously at a high level, to say like, here's what's in the plan.
Okay.
And so I'd be happy to do that. And I think that
if you want to do that, just send a note to, if CAB wants to do that and CSEC wants to do that, then send a note to the chair, Mike Lawson, and that you schedule.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good comment about the executive summary. I hadn't planned to do that as of yet. I think that's a really, really helpful feedback from you and Julie, that a really high level summary of it might be really helpful for folks who don't want to dig into 80 pages, which I don't know why everyone doesn't want to read 80 pages.
So yes.
A reflection that I had about it was, could you make any more short videos that were at the blueprint level?
So there's going to be one short video that it's almost done, that kind of talks about the plan at a high level. So obviously there's the presentation I did, which was just me doing a Zoom presentation to myself. But there'll be a 2-minute video that will be about the plan as a whole. But that's a good idea, Doug. Maybe there could be a series of short videos digging into each plan element for people who are interested in one particular area, like energy or natural resources. That could be a good way to present some of the information in smaller snippets.
You had a video about each of these sections.
Yeah, those are the elements, yeah.
Just to kind of introduce to them and drill into them, because a lot of people are not going to get that far into the document and read unless they know that there's some, that will call attention to those parts too.
Yeah. So
go ahead, Brian.
So part of the original plan was for there was going to be short videos to accompany this, coming from like we did for the 3 videos, one on water, one on EVs that were done in the past, and that was unfortunate because COVID basically made it such that we couldn't have all that in-person meeting to do the production of those videos. But that idea was part of the original plan, and it was COVID that kind of took out those videos. But I would love to see us go back and do that sometime later.
Yeah, so we have one kind of replacement video that is just me voicing over footage talking about the plan.
It gives a great executive summary.
It was the best we could do for now, but yeah, I think this plan will be done right in July, but the implementation of it will just be beginning. So I think all this community engagement about the plan and what's in it and what does that mean for each resident and business of Concord, that is part of the next step. And so I'm looking forward to working on that.
I do want to say that it is not really the start of these plans. These actions, some of them are already ongoing. So this is going to be a document that gets updated. We'll probably do a yearly kind of summary update that gets attached to it. But every few years, we're going to go through the document again and update the plan on where we are and add some new implementation steps. And maybe if we identify new actions, do that in the future. And that's why we're continuing to ask for feedback even after the plan is published and done in July, so that we can have those collection of ideas to go back to when we update this.
I don't want to get us off our agenda, so I don't know if anyone has any general feedback.
One.
Can I just ask, are we done with the shared screen? Because I can't do I haven't figured out how to keep typing my notes while we're on a shared screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah. I just wanted to show this report very quickly, and you can see here that they've gone through the Concord Library. They found historical photos of flooding events in Concord Center, and have identified a lot of information. So this is a wonky little document, so it's not as easy to read. But if you want to know about floodplains, town resiliency, and those kind of details, it's a wonderful addition that we didn't have before that we do now.
Which document is that, Brian?
This is One Architect's. Here, I'll scroll to the top.
It's not part of the document right now, Jerry, but it will be in the final one.
It's Appendix X.
It's
Yes.
Appendix X.
that wonderful secretive thing. All right, and I'm going to stop sharing so that we can take notes.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I have just a little bit of feedback. Without getting too picky about it, I felt that the goals for energy and CMLP were not aggressive enough, particularly around battery storage. And yeah, are you surprised, Brian?
I'm trying to hold my tongue. I'm going to mute.
Know that. So that's why I said I don't want to get too picky, but while I was pretty impressed with the bulk of the document, I didn't read all of it. But where I zeroed in was on energy, and that felt I felt like a bit of a letdown, actually.
You mean the indicators, Jerry, or
The time frames.
oh, okay.
Example, let me find it. So on page 52,
Gotcha. Okay.
item 3, implementation steps, it says engage vendors and install utility scale energy storage system. Okay, that's a good implementation step. I don't know why 2022 is the start of that time frame. Why couldn't that be this year or next year, 2021? Especially engaging vendors. That's not that hard to do. So I don't want to get too picky in this meeting, but when I thought about that, it just felt like, especially knowing what other communities have done, we can do better than that.
I think it follows on action 1 in that table, which they assume is going to take some time. That's, but.
Well, no, how do you avoid options without engaging vendors?
You're right.
Maybe the term engage is not.
Engage means get them signed up, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, I don't know. That's an optimistic perspective.
Yeah.
Well, this kind of feedback, feel free to please submit through the forum so I can document it.
Will.
Thank you.
Will.
So, Jerry, absolutely. Kate knows my edits to this section were extensive. And one of the big pieces of feedback CAB had related to weak wording. So there wasn't a lot of teeth. It was weak wording and so forth. But what I said to that was, this is where Concord is, including staff. So this group tends to have a certain slant to what they'd like to see happen. And then other groups may have different views on how aggressive things should be. This is the compromise. This is where we kind of landed in the middle. Dave Wood had a lot of input into the energy section, as he should. And I agree that some of the stuff is weakly worded. I wanted to see a lot more about distributed battery storage and virtual power plants and software to do so. But it's picking priorities. It's where are we going to spend our time and effort? And this plan doesn't mean it will never end up in this plan. It just might not be the first thing we do in the plan. And and I'm going to keep pushing for energy storage, but I'm the outlier in the average of the town discussion.
Well, George Bernard Shaw's comment about that. All change is due to the unreasonable man, because the reasonable man changes to meet everyone else's expectations. The unreasonable man who elicits change.
I've never been considered reasonable.
All right, I'm off my soapbox.
All right.
I have a question about, and maybe it's a little bit editorial, but it's under tracking success in the blueprint section, and there's always a thing that says outputs and one that says outcomes, and it's hard to know why some things are. I think they're all outcomes, but I'm wondering, are you trying to distinguish measurable outcomes from other expected outcomes?
So the outputs are like tangible things that will result from this. So I'm just flipped open to the stormwater one, for example. So an output being like a report or a regulation or some kind of like document of sorts, and the outcome being more of maybe not like quantitatively measurable, but more of like, what is the result that we actually want to see come from this action?
Okay, well,
I
okay.
don't know if that
outputs,
helps. It is a little, I can see the,
it's a little hazy sometimes, but yeah.
yeah, I got you. Anyone else? Otherwise, Doug, maybe you can move us along on the agenda.
I've got one quick question. You refer to waste diversion rate in the plan. Isn't that just a recycling rate?
No. Waste diversion
It
could
could
be.
include
I was sort of flummoxed by the term.
it's just waste that doesn't go to a landfill, so it could be also composting.
And, you know, if Kim Slack was here, you could talk about sludge digestion instead of landfilling for the sewer treatment plant. There's many forms of waste that we generate as a town.
I just felt there are places in the document where there's sort of specialized vocabulary. And if you're not on top of that vocabulary, you can misconstrue what it really is talking about.
Yeah, that was a frustration with CAB. They very much wanted more technical lingo to be more specific, and to have this document be more of a you know, leader's working document rather than as readable to the average person. But as Kate has mentioned, that's a big part of this, is for it to be readable by the average citizen. So there's a little bit of that balance. Maybe waste diversion is more of a technical term than maybe we assumed.
I guess my one comment, and I know Kate knows my comment, but there is nothing that takes into account methane emissions from leaky gas lines. And not only do they leak methane, they also kill trees. And there are initiatives to, in other towns, to monitor that and do something about it. So that was my only really substantial comment.
How would you track that? So the reason I asked that question is because I don't think we could get a specific quantity of gas released, and the way that it's currently tracked is on safety, not volume. So how would we accurately collect data to track progress?
Well, National Grid puts out maps of where there are leaks and grades them for a start. And I don't know how that is initially started, whether people can smell gas and they come out. But you can measure the amount of gas around trees, for example. And if you can measure the amount of gas, of methane, you also can measure the amount of oxygen. And if the oxygen level drops below 10%, the tree just doesn't have enough oxygen to grow, because roots need oxygen. So you can certainly stick probes in the ground and measure that methane that way. It doesn't really measure, it measures how much is in the soil. It doesn't really measure how much is coming out.
Yeah, so what we need is not so much a new way of tracking, but we need to find an existing way that it is tracked and relate that to emission reduction. And I think that was the struggle, because I know National Grid has those 1, 2, and 3 ratings for those leaks. But I do know that rating system is based on safety, not on volume. So if there's a way that National Grid is calculating the volume of loss for those leaks, if we could find that data set, that's what I'd like to use to track, but I don't know where that exists.
I don't know anything.
Like we could say that there's 100 leaks in town and we want to see reductions in the number of leaks. That's something trackable as an indicator of success, because National Grid tracks how many there are. But that's a really good, I'm kind of surprised that's not in there, because I know how big of an issue that is.
There's one other issue that I noticed is missing, and I can imagine why. This is uncomfortable for most of us to contemplate. But eating meat,
Yeah, food.
meat consumption is very absent.
All of scope 3 is not in here.
Well, so scope 3 scope 3 is included in ways. Brian thinks of scope 3 as like just consumption, but we have not done a consumption-based inventory, so that's where that would be accounted for, Sharon, and that's something that's come up many times, and I think would be an area for a plan update. Consumption-based community-wide inventories are very difficult, very time-consuming, very difficult to make accurate, and mostly so far only really large cities with a lot of staff are taking those on, but it's not to say that it's not possible. I think that could be something we could consider down the line, but that would make it, I think, more relevant and tied to an actual inventory of our emissions. Right now, the priority actions are really focused on areas of emissions that we are measuring that are boundaries of the town. So
it's the measurable aspect of that's the difficult part. Because we can't make a plan to do something and not be able to measure if we're actually doing it.
I think Bob had commented to put in some disclaimer of we know we're not addressing. Maybe that's something we should mention, that we know we're not addressing.
Yeah. I mean, I have thought about that. It could help us to write, but I think it's a good comment, Sharon. Thank you.
I could also add a comment about that. So as soon as you put into this document things we're not addressing, people stop focusing on the actionable items and start to focus on arguing about the things that we know we can't do. So I would vote not to put that in there. We can make a secret document of things that we know aren't in there.
That will be Appendix X.
For future consideration.
It's an important topic, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not something to be like masked away, because it's a significant part of the issue.
But again, is it a actionable item in the plan?
Well, should it be an actionable item in the plan?
Well, if it's not measurable, then it really can't be acted on. And a lot of the scope 3 problems, like eating meat, well, how do we distinguish locally grown grass-fed meat versus, meat from a factory farm that happens to be in Texas? We don't have data and auditable tracking processes to track the emissions related to those production methods. So we thus can't say, well, if you're eating local meat, you get this value. You eat standard meat, you get that value. That's the trackable part that is difficult. So again, this is also about setting priorities. Is it a priority to focus on getting people to stop eating meat? Or is the focus on decarbonizing the electricity we all use, or putting more insulated homes in Concord? What's more actionable? What's more of a priority, rather than discussing what we can't do?
Getting back to consumption, there's certainly means of encouraging less consumption currently in town. such as, I don't know whether our water bills are tiered for consumption, for instance.
They
Same thing with
are,
our,
or they have been.
what about the electric bill? Is that also tiered?
We're getting rid of those, but that's a light board issue. That's not a plan issue.
Well, it
Because
should, I mean, if people use more power, they should be paying a higher fee. It goes into some carbon fund.
I could go on for 15, 20 minutes about explaining that, but basically that was the thinking back in 2009. And as we get people to adopt heat pumps, their consumption of electricity is going up, but as they fuel switch, we want them to fuel switch. We want them to get off of oil and propane and natural gas and go to electricity that's clean. That raises their consumption rate of electricity. So having a tiered rate penalizes them for doing that. And we want to remove that now because we've got a green power supply. Sorry, that hit a topic that I've been arguing for a while at the light point.
Bob, I think you have a good point, and if there are particular areas in the plan that could be strengthened to that effect of encouraging conservation, then I think that would be helpful suggestions on the draft.
Yeah, I still didn't see anything specifically about road specifications. It's too general. They need to change our specs on materials using for pavements and concrete, because otherwise they'll never do it. They'll just stick with the same old cheap methods of asphalt instead of a superior product that reduces emissions. It needs a specific mention.
What action would you relate that to?
Specifications for the highway department.
No. In the plan, what action?
Consideration of low carbon road construction products, which exist.
Like fall under low impact development.
Okay. Which is
I mean, look
generally
at
related
the
to
Rubber
both.
Pavement Association. Just go to their website.
Oh, Bob, I understand. I know those products exist. I know, but I'm trying to relate it to the plan and where it should be placed in the plan.
Anyways, I could go on with specifics, but I don't want to take up everybody's time.
We'll submit
just
those
like to-
through the website.
I would just like to mention that in about 3 minutes, I have to drop off to go to another Zoom meeting.
Okay.
Nice to see you, Terry.
Thanks for all your work.
Are we ready to move on to the next topic, or do we want to talk about this anymore? I think this is going to probably be an ongoing topic. So how we relate to it, it'll probably be a part of each meeting in the next few months.
Thank you, everyone.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next topic on the agenda is to plan for any needed CSEC officer elections as of the end of September instead of at the end of May. I'm currently the chair and I don't mind continuing to do it, but I was informed by Janet that we're only allowed to do this for 1 year period. And
I'm not sure it's a hard and fast rule, but it's certainly a tradition that's at a past, you're only chair for 1 year.
how do others feel about this at this point? What do we want to do?
Well, and I mean, we can wait for until after town meeting, so your term is extended a bit.
September and then decide in September.
I mean, we could talk about changing the chair before town meeting too, could we not? I don't know.
What is the date of town meeting right now?
It's a moving target.
It'll probably be September. And many boards are waiting until after town meeting to switch who is chair, but some are switching who is chair right now. So you can go either way.
Thank you.
It isn't, I did chair for 2 years, so it's possible to two, but
I don't
it's
know
also
if
good to change things around.
people want to support that, but I'm not the one that can make that decision.
Oh, I see Janet,
There you are.
Sharon raised her fingers. That means she wants to do it.
No, I'm giving you a thumbs up. Continue. Go ahead.
No.
I would second that motion. I think Doug's done an excellent job, and if you want to continue, that's wonderful.
The only thing, there's a small caveat that I just have to, like I was last year in July, I'm going to be in Maine. And since we're doing this remotely, I can probably do it with Zoom, if that is okay with people. Do we want to also, are we going to have a monthly Zoom meeting going forward? Is that what people want?
I think so. This climate plan is really all hands on deck, and there's 11 things where CSEC has names have shown up, and so we should start like thinking about, hey, well, how are we going to do this stuff? This is a lot of stuff, and it's worth keeping.
What I will send around afterwards as a follow-up to this meeting, the spreadsheet that I created that just pulled out the action title and the fact that CSEC was mentioned in relationship to it as a place to contemplate what we should or shouldn't be doing. I don't know, there is still a matter of how to translate the action into what it is exactly we're doing. So I guess then I'll just continue to do it for the time being, and we'll revisit it in September. And if you want me to continue, I'll just continue. What about the pardon? Do we need to have another? Do we need to have another member of CSEC? Are we short a person?
We are short a person,
online.
and I think you or somebody sent out a list of a large number of people who were interested, and I don't know how.
Can somebody help me with this?
Somebody from that list, if we want to increase our number to 9.
I can get a list of anyone who's submitted a green card, and usually I think the chair would be involved in that, and then I think this committee's town manager appointed, so it would be going through the town manager to get somebody appointed.
But Doug, do you want some any help in choosing somebody, or are you comfortable just picking somebody from the list?
I don't have the list, so yes, I would be help. I appreciate having some help. Why don't I work with you, Janet?
Okay, I'm sure I don't know everybody on the list, but I can.
How do I get the list?
I can get it for you.
Would you send it to me, Kate?
Mm-hmm.
How many people are on the list?
There were a lot. I don't know why I saw the list. Somebody.
If they were interested people.
Somebody sent it to me thinking that I was still chair.
Well, do you think we should
remember who it was?
Do we just choose one, or can we, if there are several interested people, then should we invite them?
We have a maximum of 9 members in the committee, and right now there are 8.
Okay.
So Jen, just going back to this, I, as chair for CAB, received an email from Jeremy, from the town manager's office about green cards. It came to me May 13th. So Janet and Doug, I would suggest checking your email from him around that time, and you may receive a memo as well as an Excel list of those with green cards.
That's probably. I think Jeremy sounds right, but does he have? Do you know his last name?
Romanul.
Hold on, let me get this.
Jeremy. I can forward it to you. I'll find it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kate.
Kate to forward. Okay. Um, Julie, are you okay with continuing on as the secretary?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. You're terrific.
Okay. Are there any other positions that we have to contemplate? I think that covers it. Okay. I've got here on the 7th thing to have the CSEC board recamp in general, since we haven't been together, discuss the CSEC committee wants to do based on the COVID physical distancing for the monthly meeting. So we're going to do a monthly Zoom meeting. What date in July do you want to do this next meeting? Today is the 12th. Do you want to do it around July 12th?
Sounds good to me.
That's a Sunday.
What's the Thursday of the second week in July? We're saying
Ninth.
That would be the 9th. That is the week. That is the week after July 4th. I mean, the 4th is a Saturday, so that's the week following July 4th.
Yeah.
Of course, most people probably aren't going to be traveling much this year.
We want to say the week after that, so we're a little bit later in the 15th range.
Sure. 16th? The
Thursday
Thursday would be the 16th.
Not the 16th. Sorry.
Pardon?
Preferably not the 16th.
Okay.
How about the
Back to the
14th?
ninth.
The
I
14th?
just read in our February minutes that we said we were going to shoot for the second Thursday.
Yeah, let's go for the 9th.
I don't really have any strong opinion one way or the other. Just there was some discussion about this in February, and that's what we decided as a group.
And does anybody have an objection to the 9th, apart from the fact somebody's still recovering from the 4th?
No, that works.
It's fine for me.
I might not be around on the 9th, but you could proceed without me.
What?
For agenda for the 9th meeting, do you want to have further discussion about this plan?
I think so, and I think there's, I mean, Doug was saying that he was looking at everywhere that CSEC was listed. And I think it would be really good for us to start thinking, okay, what can we do to help move each of these things along?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is the idea that we will sort of like home in on, one item at a time and kind of like focus on that and do some big push or campaign like Brian was saying, and education round about that, and then move on to the next one and try to like work through a list? Is that the idea?
Something.
Let me share with you my screen really quickly, and I'll just show you what I did. And then I'll send it out if you want.
Did we decide on the date? Is that, by the way, we're having the 9th still?
9th is good to me.
Okay. The 9th.
I won't be here on the 9th.
I'll be able to come that day, so.
And a usual evening time, like 7 or 7:30, or
Could it be done in the afternoon still?
I'm not available Thursday afternoons. I'm available Thursday evenings, but I'm tied up from 2 to 3:30.
Same here.
Really 2 to 4 on Thursday afternoons.
I'm thinking July may be just a little different than, because I don't, it's harder for me to know what is going on in July. Are you available, or how are people available Friday the 17th?
What did you say? Friday the 7th?
Friday the 17th.
Friday the 17th.
Yeah.
I can't look at my calendar.
Yep.
It looks good to me.
Yeah.
Paper calendar's good.
Okay, I'd rather do it a little later in July than earlier,
Okay.
because I'm moving around. So let's say July 17th, Friday. And I apologize for being off of the Thursday. I'll shoot for trying on the Thursday after that. But
And so you want to do it in the afternoon, like 2 o'clock?
yeah, 2 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay, Friday.
What, 2 o'clock, what day?
17th.
17th.
2 o'clock on
Friday, the
17th.
17th of July.
Yeah,
And 4 o'clock would work too.
2 o'clock is not good for me. 4 o'clock might be possible.
Four o'clock on a Friday.
Does that sound unenthusiastic, Kate?
Not usually when I'm my best self, but
Right.
I could step it up.
You know, I can't tell you what's going to work perfectly for me or not either. So, if you want to say July 9th still on, oh, did somebody say they can't do it on July 9th?
I can't do it July 9th, so that would make it I'd have to try to get someone else to help me with Zoom.
Could you do it at 4 o'clock on July 17th?
I
Getting
could.
a little late for a Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
But if we're not going to start until 4, I could do Thursday.
Could you do it at 3?
Thursday the 16th.
No, July the 17th.
17th at 3.
Yeah.
There was somebody that had a conflict, is whoever it was.
I think it was
Jerry.
Jerry had a conflict.
Yeah. You know, this might be more efficient through
And do a doodle poll.
yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Well,
What's the best time for everybody right now? The 9th or the
be
17th?
open.
I think we should have Kate there because I
Yeah.
think she's such a good resource.
I agree. And I also think if we have it a little bit later, there'll be a little bit more time that this will have been absorbed.
Right.
I also don't mind mornings. But I don't know if everybody else feels the same way.
Any time of day.
I can't make mornings any day.
Okay.
Okay.
Could you do 3 o'clock on the 17th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say 3 o'clock on the 17th.
Okay. It's on my calendar.
Oh, that was harder than I thought. Okay, can people see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Okay, well, so what I did was I just went into the blueprint table, and this is the blue from the as-built, the built environment. And these are the things that were over here. If you look in that section, you'll see that Comprehensive Sustainability Energy Committee, CSEC, shows up. And in each case, I just pulled out the ones that were CSEC related. And this is the action: improve energy performance of commercial buildings. And this is like the tasks that will be involved in it hypothetically. And these are all of the groups that might contribute to it. And the question would be, what is CSEC's role going to be in that, if and whether we are? Kate, how did you come to identify CSEC in these places?
I put CSEC into actions that were relevant to CSEC's charge of engaging the community on sustainability.
Okay.
Considering the time, that's 3:37 according to my computer. Usually we meet for 2 hours. Maybe we should put this on the agenda for next time, and we should all think about.
That was my intention.
what to do.
I just wanted to show you the document.
Oh, okay, all right.
I did not intend to go through it individually, but
That's good.
I'll send it out to everybody, and we can use it as a basis for maybe some of the review we do next week. I mean, on the 17th. I'll just use that as a focal point for the agenda.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions regarding that topic? Okay. Now, the last thing that we have here is to determine doing any targeted mailings or anything specific with the CSEC poster. I did notice that Kate did put a link to the poster in the plan, which was nice to see. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah.
Are you talking about sustainable home now, Doug?
Yeah, yes, I am talking about
Okay.
sustainable. You know, a question that came up was, you know, because we're in a COVID period, how hard would it be to mail a copy of it to all of the town residents? How many people are in the town that have mailing addresses?
I guess I just feel like that might be a little bit like in isolation. It would be a stronger message if it was connected with an event or some other sort of education that we were doing, and you know, everything wrapped in together.
I'm not suggesting that we not do that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But my wife made the comment to me. She said, "Why don't you mail it out to everybody in the town?"
Mm-hmm.
It would end up in the trash in a lot of the houses,
It's
unfortunately.
also very expensive to do a town mailing.
Yeah.
I was thinking that it might be nice to leave some in the real estate brokers' establishments. You know, people go in there and pick them up and look at them, and could maybe draw the attention of the brokers to what we're thinking.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think that was sort of one of the intents that we were going to be working on in March, and we never got to.
I'm going to drop, guys. I got to go.
Okay.
Thanks, Ron.
Good to see you.
See you, Brian.
Any other thoughts?
Well, we do want to decide whether to do the adult ed course in the fall, and the who is it? What contacted us to see whether we wanted to get on that schedule. I sort of think we do. That's kind of something where we can easily be ready for, and I don't know whether it will end up being this kind of course and not in person by that time. But what do people think about letting her know, picking a date in late September or early October for that adult ed course?
Yeah, no harm in it, right, Doug? Brad?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Will that fall on one person's plate, or will that fall on all of our plates?
Well, there's already a team working on that, right? Which is Jerry, me, and Brad. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we haven't been working too hard.
No.
Nor I.
But yeah, so I'm happy to try to find a date and make sure that it works for you guys.
Thank you.
Okay. You know, I do think that some of the actions that were in the plan that I saw that we'll talk more about do have to do with us being involved with engagement and in educational processes more. And it's just a matter of figuring out how to best approach that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe we don't have anything more to say about that at this particular point.
So for the moment, are we just kind of, we're not even going to attempt to try to think when the sustainable fair might be that we had originally planned for whatever it was, May.
How do other people feel about that?
I don't think we can plan anything until we know. Well, first of all, we have to know whether Baker allows such meetings, you know.
Yeah.
And then we have to think, well, if we do, you know, even if they're allowed, will people come? So I'm not prepared to.
What's happening with this second wave?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I'm more inclined to feel like it's more appropriate to think about this for next winter or next spring, you know, potentially. I hate to put it out that long, but
Mm.
Yeah, but I'm thinking next spring is probably going to be the first possible time. I don't know. I have to see what happens in the next couple of months.
I wonder if we should, because engagement is different now at this moment. I wonder if we should think in terms of coaching, and saying, you know, various people on CSEC have some expertise on the things that they've been thinking about or could gate them. And so if people get in touch with, I get most of my coaching referrals through CMLP or a couple other channels for heat pumps, but there are people who want to find out about water heaters, or they want to find out about, I don't know, maybe we should try to start thinking about that. And
you know, it's potentially possible to use the virtual platform like of a Zoom meeting to have an engagement event about the post.
Yeah.
And maybe we should design something that we could do, say in October, where we're actually just conducting a Zoom meeting like this, but we're talking to an audience that has an interest potentially in the poster. But the question is finding that maybe we send an invitation out to a certain number of people. I don't know how best to register those people, but maybe the platform is certainly maybe more flexible for people and they can actually have a discussion about it, you know?
Yeah.
Have like a webinar, have like the next Heat Smart meeting, engagement event be hosted like a webinar.
We could pick topics like ventilation or what, you know, and I'm brainstorming a little bit, but water conservation, whatever it is, and bring an expert in to help us talk through a subject.
Mm-hmm.
I thought.
Yeah.
It might be a way to get
You're
feedback.
thinking of a series of webinars to cover different topics?
Yeah.
Might be a good
I
idea.
was just, the notion of a series just resonated with me. These don't need to be lengthy webinars, but if we had a series of short ones on very focused topics
They
that
could
we
be
could,
recorded too, and then they could be made available for playback.
right.
Yeah, you can link up Zoom with like Facebook Live too, so you could have it go live at a certain time and then also record it and have it be a series on YouTube later.
If you attend live, then you have the opportunity to ask questions and get answers.
Right.
How does that work again, Kate?
I mean, there's many platforms you could use, but you could potentially do like Facebook Live. Because then if people are on Facebook, it pops up that this is happening live.
With Facebook Live, can you put questions in? I mean, I know people write comments into Facebook Live things, but can they write questions? I mean, the Facebook Live things I've seen, you know, the comments stream down, you can't read any.
Yeah.
I wonder if anybody's actually paying attention to what anybody's saying.
I think if this is an idea you guys want to explore, you could talk about different pros and cons of different platforms, but there are many options that you could think about.
Right.
It's a good idea to do a series of short webinars, because those long, hour-long presentations, like that's sometimes more than people want, but if you can do kind of short 10, 15-minute videos, I think you could get more viewership.
You know what I could imagine, maybe it would be interesting, just I'm thinking out off the top of my head right now, is we had talked about case studies, you know, in the past, and some of us had expressed the desire to write up case studies, but you could even have like a presentation on a webinar type format where you just talk about what somebody did.
Yeah.
to put a heat pump in or something like that. Or to, just to kind of walk other people through their scenario.
Yep.
Takes a lot of preparation.
Why don't we each think of a webinar we could do for the next meeting in July as a homework exercise? What we think might be useful, and an expert or two to invite, a format that would be engaging for a, maybe it's a 20-minute discussion plus then Q&A of people.
Would these topics relate to sustainable home or the climate action and resilience plan?
Yes.
Sustainable home,
Okay.
I think.
That keeps it focused, at least.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that
I mean, there's
the-
overlap, of course, but just to know. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
We could come up with a catchy name, sustainable, I don't know, something that you wouldn't want to miss it if you were into it.
Okay. And this would be
Actually, when I
advertised
say-
in the town and that social media
Yeah,
and a newsletter. We could do a newsletter.
yeah. Julie is good at coming up with catchy names.
Let's see. Don't pressure me now.
Yes.
Mhm.
Resplendent Fridays or something.
There we go. Now I like it.
It does strike me that having a virtual meeting is easier than trying to plan something at an event center, which isn't possible right now, and which is always, the likelihood of getting more people virtually is better, I think, than having them have to go to a place.
Mhm. Yeah, probably.
And this is something you can advertise in town, but it's okay if somebody came from another town,
Right.
as long as it's not, we don't want it to be just some random group, but
We don't want anyone from Lexington.
yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, I think we have enough fodder for our next meeting. And does anybody have any other public comments they want to make about things that we ought to be focused on? If not, are we ready to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All in favor? We have to vote?
Hi.
Good. Great to see you all.
Yeah, very good to see you.
Likewise.
Yes.
Good to see everybody. Have a good weekend.